Hi, today we're going to go through the second part of the history of the Jews in a nutshell. We have seen how they came to Rome long before the birth of Christ, 200 years earlier. And today we're seeing what happened from the Middle Ages onwards. In the Middle Ages, discrimination and isolation had started. In the 1200s, a pope decided that they needed to wear the color yellow so that everybody could see that they were of Jewish descent. And at a certain point in 1492, just when Christopher Columbus went and discovered the Americas, at the same time, Isabella and Ferdinand had not only given Columbus the resources to go and do that, but they had also expelled from Spain and later on from Sicily in the early 1500s all the Jews. What did they do? A lot of them came to Rome, and there was a bit of tension. There could have been a lot of tension because every one of these communities had different rites. So in Rome, there started being a school of the temple, that was the Roman Jews, and then a school from Castillan, a school from Catalan, and a new school from the province of the Vatican States. And then there was the Sicilian school. So there were 5 different types of rite. And they did not mingle. They could have mingled during the day, but as far as the religion went, they still kept different rites. And so they could not, absolutely not, have different synagogues. They could only have one building. So what did the Jewish community do? They put all of the different schools, which were not schools as you and I think of, but they were more like the 5 different synagogues, into one place. And so that's why you find the Cinque Scole and the Piazza delle Cinque Scole, and that means the 5 schools, because every type had their own different ways. And what happened? Well, there was Martin Luther's Reformation, and that worked against the Jews in a roundabout way, because the Reformation sparked the Counter-Reformation. And if you were not Catholic in Rome, you would be worse for wear. And so the Counter-Reformation and the Council of Trent started in 1545. And sure enough, 10 years later, 1555, the Pope Paul IV Carafa decided to create the Ghetto. So the Ghetto meant that there was a very limited area and everybody in the Jewish community had to sleep there. During the day, they could go and work outside, but at night, they had to go through the gates of the ghetto and be locked up. It also had a new rule whereby Jewish people could not have any profession as they wished. They could only be money lenders, or they could sell second-hand clothes and materials. This started making life really difficult. There were at the time about 100,000 people in Rome and about 3,000 Jewish people, and they were all confined in the ghetto. This created a sort of little village, but the conditions of life were unhealthy, and the more Jews came to Rome and the more the ghetto grew, the more the conditions became unhealthy. It was right on the Tiber in a teeny weeny little area. And a lot of you always ask me, can I go and visit the ghetto? Well, you can and you can't. Not exactly. You can't today because it's gone mostly. So I will show you what I mean. This is a map of the old ghetto. So just to understand each other, this is the Tiberine Island, l'Isola Tiberina, where 3 of my kids were born. There are 2 hospitals on this island, the Israelitic one and the Catholic one, Fate Bene Fratelli. This is Ponte Fabricio, and on the other side of Ponte Fabricio, you add this area and out of all of Rome, Jewish people could only live there, which made things really, really hard. And so because it couldn't grow in extension, and because there were gates and that they had to go through to come in at night, they had to grow in height. So if you like, the first skyscrapers of Rome were in the ghetto because the people kept building on top, or as much as they could, around their own building to make space. So conditions were really, really hard. The space between the homes were tiny, and so not much light could come through. So the rooms would be not only tiny, but also dark. Life was tough in the whole of Rome, of course, but in this area it was especially tough. And what happened then? Well, there were so many Jews that the Pope had to concede, and in 1825, Leo XII added a little part. Now, why do I say that you can and cannot go and visit the ghetto? Well, because luckily, something really good happened after 1870. Why 1870? We've seen it plenty of times. 1870 is when the state of Italy and the Savoy reigning dynasty with Vittorio Emanuele II from Turin and from the whole of Italy conquered the state of the church, and the Pope was no longer the King of Rome, which meant that as in Italy there was the Statuto Albertino, which granted freedom of religion to everybody, the Jews could just be free and have the same rights as everybody else. It also meant that the authorities saw the kind of life that you had to live if you lived in here. And it was so bad that it was decided to tear it all down and level it flat. Now, I want you to notice that unlike today, these homes are straight on the river Tiber. This is really interesting because today that is no longer the case. I'm going to tell you more about it in the next video.